There is a universal disease that we all get at some times. It is common to man, and perhaps you have it right now. It is called the disease of discouragement. And we sometimes just get discouraged, and we want to just throw in the towel and just give up. And this is universal. It happens to all of us at different times. And the sad thing is it's contagious. It can go from one to another. And but the good news is it's curable, and I want to help you with it today. Maybe you feel like giving up on your marriage. Maybe you feel like giving up on your job. Maybe you feel like giving up on your walk with Christ. Maybe you feel like giving up on your church, God forbid. And so I want to help you with it today. If you didn't get the outline, hold up your hand, and we'll give you an outline there so that you can follow along. Also, I need you to turn in the Old Testament to page 354 in the Bible there that's on the rack. If you would turn to 354, or in your Bible, it's the book of Nehemiah, the 4th chapter. Nehemiah. Israel had turned their back on God. They had turned to idol worship. And therefore God, over the years, as they turned their back on Him, eventually God, after much warning from the prophets like Jeremiah and the others, after much warning, they were finally turned over to the Babylonians. The Babylonians came and conquered Israel, and they destroyed the city and destroyed the temple, destroyed the walls, and the people were taken captive over to Babylon, spent 70 years in captivity. Nehemiah was one of those people. He was cupbearer to the king, and then he came back as the Medes and Persians conquered Babylon, and the Medes and Persians allowed them to go back. And Nehemiah comes back to lead the people in the building of the walls. We've been through this book from beginning to end more than once. But this chapter, chapter 4, to me is a great one because Nehemiah is helping the people at a very strategic time. Let's look at causes of discouragement as we begin. What are the causes? The first one is in verse 10 of chapter 4 of Nehemiah, and I encourage you to keep your Bible open as we go through here because I'm going to show you verses as we go through. And in verse 10 it says, "Thus in Judah it was said, the strength of the burden bearers is failing." The people were getting tired, and the first cause of discouragement is fatigue. Just physical exhaustion, fatigue. When you are physically down, it's hard to be up spiritually and emotionally. And that's where these people were at. They were physically down. And sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is just get some rest. Take a nap. Not right now, but get some rest. When we went through the 23rd Psalm last fall, we saw that phrase where he said, "He makes me to lie down." And God knows your frame. He made you, and He knows how important it is for you to get rest. In 1 Kings 19, Elijah had just won the battle on Mount Carmel and prayed down fire to consume the sacrifice. A great victory on Mount Carmel. But then in 1 Kings 19, Elijah is discouraged. And part of it was he was exhausted. He was physically spent. And Vince Lombardi said, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all." And we just need rest. And look in chapter 4 of Nehemiah. I want you to see where they were at in the building of the wall. Chapter 4 of Nehemiah and verse 6. "So built we the wall, and the whole wall was joined together to half its height. For the people had a mind to work." These were good working people, like we have here at Calvary. And they wanted to get something done. They wanted to make an impact. And they were at the halfway point, though. The wall was halfway up, and that's when it's easy to get discouraged. You're just about halfway, and the enthusiasm of the beginning is over, and it's a long way to the finish, and we're tired, and so fatigue. The second reason for discouragement is frustration. And we see this in verse 10 also, the same verse of Nehemiah chapter 4. "The strength of the burden bearers is failing, yet there is much rubbish." There's a lot of rubbish. There's a lot of destruction all around the wall. We're trying to clean up all this rubbish, and it creates a lot of frustration. Is that the way you feel sometimes? You're just frustrated. with life. There's just so much to do, and there's so many things that get in the way, and trivial things that keep you from your main goal. And do you have one of those jobs when you never know if your work is done or not? You know, and somebody asked me about why I mow the grass where I live, and I said, man, it at least gives me something to do, so I can look when I'm done. I say, look what I did. It's done. I accomplished that. You know, and with my work, it's not that way. You know, sometimes you go home at the end of the day and you say, what did I actually accomplish today? And you can't just see what you got done sometimes. And so, fatigue, frustration. There's a third reason for discouragement. It is in verse 10 again, and we see these words in verse 10. There's much rubbish, and we ourselves are unable to rebuild the wall. The third reason is failure. We are unable to do the job. We're just unable to get it done. Sometimes things don't go as planned, right? Sometimes we just don't get the job accomplished. And how do you react? Do you blame yourself? Do you blame others? Do you complain? We must see failure as a temporary setback. Everyone experiences failures at times. We don't always accomplish our goal. We don't always make it. And that's where they were at. And they were saying, we're just not able. And there's another reason for discouragement, and it is in verse 11 of Nehemiah 4, where we find these words. Our enemies said they will not know or see until we come among them, kill them, and put a stop to the work. Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times, they will come up against us from every place where you may turn. Wow. The fourth reason for discouragement is fear. Sometimes we just become fearful. There were enemies who did not want the wall rebuilt, and they ridiculed. In fact, if you read a few verses up above this, they said, well, if a fox walked up on that wall, it would collapse.